The Marxists are very pro-gun because the argument. Well, do you know what? I'm writing about this in my upcoming book, The White Pill. There's a myth among the boomer conservatives that gun control started as a result of they didn't want black people to become armed post-Civil War.
Well, we said that.
It actually started in Illinois because a lot of these labor unions were forming militias and they were drilling because they were ready to start a revolution. And this was a big problem. It's like, wait a minute, the Second Amendment specifically says you should have a militia. They're forming labor militias in the idea of eventually killing the capitalists and taking over. And this was a huge Supreme Court case, and they lost. And that's where gun control really kind of started.
What year was it?
I think 1870 or something.
And then what, within like a couple decades, what was it called? The Haymarket Massacre? Was that what it was called?
Don't spoil my book, but yes, the Haymarket Massacre.
That's in Chicago. Was that in Chicago?
That is in Chicago. Yes.
Yeah. That was what happened with that? Someone threw dynamite or something.
Okay. This is the story of Louis Ling, who's on the cover of the Anarchist Handbook, which I'll be back on to talk about when it's ready, assuming I don't burn this bridge today. Who knows? It's a live show.
Let's start this off.
The bridge is made of glass.
So everybody understands the context. You're saying that gun control starts with these labor unions, and now we're talking about the Haymarket Massacre.
It's a very, very quick transition. So what happens is in Illinois, you had these. They're very heavily immigrant, very heavily German. Labor unions are forming militias, and they're mustering. I think that's the term when they're practicing, so on and so forth. There was a union meeting in Haymarket Square in Chicago, which is still around, and different people were talking. At night, a bomb got thrown, dynamite. A lot of people got killed, including several police officers. A bunch of anarchists were rounded up, some of whom were not even there. And they were accused of conspiracy to commit murder because they were advocating these radical ideas. One of them was someone named Louis Ling. If you look him up on the internet, he looks like Channing Tatum. It looks like a contemporary photo, even though it's from 1870 something. It's crazy.
What is it? Louis Ling?
Ling, L-I-N-G-G. He's the stud of anarchism. He was the first Che Guevara.
Wow,
basically.
You're not kidding.
I'm not, right?
I'm impressed.
Yeah, he's a hunk.
Jeez, what the heck?
So they put these anarchists on trial. Louis Ling, they had searched his house, and there was a lot of dynamite in his house. And his lawyer said weekly, well, he's got a right to have dynamite in his house. This has become a meme where Louis Ling is alleged to have said, I couldn't have thrown that bomb. I was at home making bombs. Because he wasn't there, but a bomb got thrown. They were sentenced to death. They were all hanged. Lewis was one of the, 4 of them were hanged, or 5. Lewis escaped the hanging because he snuck in a blasting cap into his jail cell, blew off his jaw, and then wrote in blood on the wall, "Hooray for anarchy." The others, one of them, when he was being hanged, said, someday the voices you strangle will be louder than someday I forget the term, whatever. They got pardoned many years later, and there's a memorial to them right now in Chicago. But this is where a lot of it started.
The gun control stuff.
Yes.
Wow.
Well,
so the conservatives, it's funny, the ACLU also got started defending communists because it was this radical revolutionary idea. So a lot of conservatives like to adopt these ideas, and they don't realize where the origins are from the radical left.
So this could have been a false flag. Like the law could have thrown dynamite in and blamed it on.
That's what they said. They said this was an agent provocateur paid for by the capitalists to get us in trouble. Well, and we still don't know who threw the bomb to this day.
So let's wrap this back to the origin of how we started talking about this, which was the Chauvin trial. They're going after one guy, Derek Chauvin. If they convict him, the state, which in my opinion is responsible, will cheer and hurrah, and all of the activists will be satisfied. Well, probably not, but if the idea is they want Chauvin put on trial as the individual, they're ignoring what's really going on. And I likened this to, I'll put it exactly like this. It's like, imagine if there was, in feudal Japan, the ninja was tasked with taking out the emperor. Instead, he fought with the palace guard and then celebrated when the palace guard, one of them, was removed from his post. Chauvin is just one guy who works for a system. Getting that guy convicted won't change anything. And he was just some guy who was doing, he was told, here's how you restrain someone. Now, whether or not he actually did anything wrong in that capacity, stopping Floyd, I disagree with the war on drugs, but there's arguments about what you do when there's statutory law in the books. Derek Chauvin was trained by the Minneapolis police to do, it's called the recovery position. That's what it said in the training thing that they released, because if you put your knee on their back, they could asphyxiate. So he literally moves his knee. Should this guy be convicted after everything we've seen with all the evidence, Chauvin with the fentanyl in his system, with a guy who now it appears to be a dealer, he appeared to be high. Floyd said before he was even restrained, did you see this? I can't breathe. He said it before he was even restrained. So all of that leads to this conclusion of at least, bare minimum, reasonable doubt. My problem, the war on drugs, first and foremost, is a big part of this. Especially when I saw, Floyd's girlfriend testify about opioid addiction and what they were going through. And I was like, this is insane, man, that we're doing this. The problem I have is the activists who are angry are being easily distracted and pointing at one guy. And when he's convicted, nothing will change. They will not do anything.
There's two things. One, they want to make an example of him to make all the other cops fall in line. Two is I just want to point out what the slogan, the thing on the memorial is, because it's a great quote. He said, this is August Spies, who's one of the ones who was hanged. He says, "The day will come when our silence will be more powerful than the voice you are strangling today." So I think that's the case with a lot of people who are killed by the state. It's that they are silenced, but what they represent, which might not actually be accurate, speaks volumes.
Yeah, well, Michael, the state realized that, and so now they go for character assassination instead.
Sure.
They learned a while back, and I'm surprised it took them as long as it did, to be honest. When they were like, "Hey, if we got a problem, we just kill him," and then it's like, "Well, congratulations, you made a martyr who's immortal now."
Right.
So they have to smear your reputation and make you a nasty diddler or something, and then all of a sudden your legacy is destroyed and nobody wants to reference your name anymore.
And they're trying to do that with the Trump administration. There were several articles written how they're trying to have people trying to make anyone who worked for him radioactive and unhireable. Remember, it was tough for the former president your job as a defense attorney is to defend child abusers, murderers, rapists, like the most horrible people. That's your job. They were having trouble finding people to defend the sitting or at the time former president for the impeachment trial.
And now you see what Facebook said, right?
No,
Facebook
I did
and Instagram.
not.
The voice of the president is not allowed on their platform.
I saw that, yeah.
The voice of
Lara
the
Trump.
British.
Yeah.
What was that?
Lara Trump, the president's daughter-in-law, she interviewed him. She didn't say anything particularly inflammatory. Didn't talk about the election. They pulled the video and they said, "You cannot have Trump's voice on our site."
So they have AI just clocking Trump's voice, ready to pull it.
No, they knew.
No,
apparently, when she expressed her intention,
they
to
called
interview,
her.
Yeah, they sent an email saying, like, "Just so you know, if you do this, you're gone." And then she was like, "I'm going to do it anyway." And I was like, right on.
They're trying to vanish a president from existence who's still alive.
This is, let me ask you, do you think that the moves being made by the establishment today are something new? Or do you think those individuals in this power structure has always existed but slipped up?
I think they're losing their power. I think these are the same moves. They're trying to making people radioactive has happened for a very long time in this country. And I think they have to ramp it up because if there's 3 networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, the 3 of us can get in a room and be like, "Look, this guy's a clown. We're not going to repeat him. Yes, 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 shake hands." That's why a lot of ideas that were kind of on the fringe would be heard by the mainstream because it's like the 3 of them said, "Yeah, we're not going to talk about it." Now, when you have this show and infinite shows on YouTube, on Rumble and all these other locations, it's impossible to have a monopoly of the megaphone. So now they're freaking out because it's very difficult to sustain a regime based on mistruths or untruths when all it takes is one jerk with a Twitter account to be like, "This is inaccurate." And then your whole facade falls. It's like finding out your wife has been cheating on you. Maybe she cheated on you once, but that changes the whole 10 years.
The crazy thing about it is, what we're seeing with the censorship, what we're seeing with Steven Crowder, it's clearly insane. And it's like every single time a new story happens, it's worse than it's been.
What do you mean by insane? Because when I heard about this when I was doing my North Korea book, a lot of times people say insane when they just don't understand the system, and a lot of times the system is coherent.
I mean insane as in the figurative that it's so shockingly outrageous it would make anyone think the world is gone nuts. Or I just mean insane as in like is a hyperbolic. This is what is going on. This is dialed up to 11.
Yeah.
Crowder broke no rule. He did not break a single rule. I know because I've spoken with Google on the phone, with Google representatives on the phone about their rules. It's really interesting. I wonder if Crowder will sue them for defamation because what they're telling people is that in these articles where people ask about Crowder, they say that he violated their deceptive policy or spam policy. But the specific email that got sent out by Google said, "You can't do this particular thing." Crowder did not do that particular thing. They said, "You can't say these 2 things at the same time." Crowder did not say those 2 things. But then they tell the press he violated that rule. Well, that's a false statement of fact. He didn't. They claimed they removed a video for trying to circumvent his restriction. He didn't. The rules clearly state, or at least Google has said, you can upload to another channel if the content is substantially different, which it was. He filmed a cell phone video saying, "Hey guys, here's what's happening." It wasn't his normal show. Too bad, they said. So this is crazy, right? Now, here's the thing. Even if they get rid of Crowder, and it really does feel like as time goes on, they are strangling these networks.
But can I interrupt? Because there's all these names that they've successfully picked off one by one that we forget about. Remember Nick Monroe?
No.
Yes, absolutely.
I remember him.
He was a badass on Twitter.
Who is he?
He was a Twitter journalist. Shout out to Nick if he's watching. And he would be breaking a lot of stories because there would be something in the corporate press, and he was this nerdy kid with a computer and a lot of spare time, and he'd do his due diligence and he'd find articles like what you're saying is not accurate. Here's the receipts. They got rid of him. Carpe Diem, who was President Trump's meme maker. This guy is basically making memes for the president, things that are going viral. They yanked him. Shout out to my friend Carpe Diem. So there's others that we can name that
Milo was a
They
shocking
vanished.
one to me.
Yeah.
That was like
that wasn't shocking to me at all.
Not shocking. He put in his Twitter profile that he worked for BuzzFeed.
It
or
was
something
that they
like
banned him across all the platforms.
That
at
was
once.
the collusion, yes.
Right. The fact that when it comes to these high profile personalities, none of them should be banned, by the way. I just don't think so. They colluded. Or at the very least, they were like waiting for the moment when they could all act in concert, and for some reason did. Although it's not completely unified, because like Twitter waits a day or two before they finally do it.
Well, they waited a while for Alex Jones.
Right.
Yeah, that was another one.
But that
Collusion. It looked
but
like.
it's very. But the thing is, like, I'll play devil's advocate to some extent. I don't think people appreciate how weak a lot of corporate America is, and no one wants to stick out their neck. So it's a lot easier for me as Jack Dorsey, if YouTube and Zuckerberg are all doing this, for me to be like, there's no cost for me to join them. But if I'm sticking my neck out, like we saw with Black Lives Matter and the guy who ran CrossFit, and he's like, this has nothing to do with us. We're a gay exercise organization. They're like, well, now you're the odd one out.
Yeah.
So it very much groupthink does play into this as not necessarily nefarious mindset.
So here's what I wonder. Obviously, there is a mainstream, and YouTube will pick off one by one all these big channels, and they're really homogenizing everything. I don't know how long will last. A lot of people are like, Tim will never get banned. He's too milquetoast, even though Facebook already removed me.
Nick Monroe is, I'm not going to call you milquetoast. Nick Monroe was not some kind of radical.
Yeah, they said he was circumvention.
Yeah.
But so even after they do that, the technology, cryptocurrency, your own private websites, open source tech still exists. Crowder has a website. He has Mug Club. He's got, he's with Blaze TV. They can reduce a decent amount of his reach on their platforms. But in the end, look at what happens when Trump gets banned off Twitter. People start losing followers like crazy.
Right.
A lot of people were only on Twitter for the president in the first place. When Patreon banned Carl Benjamin, who now runs the Lotus Eaters podcast, which you guys should check out, I lost a ton of support from people who are messaging me saying, dude, love your work, but I'm here for a lot of people and I have to move now because, my favorite show is, Carl's show. So I'm getting off of Patreon. And then I had no choice. If I stayed on, I would have lost 20 or 25% of my...
So you went through that personally. I didn't know you were on Patreon.
I went through it too. I was on Patreon. Then
Sam Harris left.
Dave Rubin launched Locals. Now I'm on malice.locals.com. It's a Patreon Facebook hybrid. It's free to join. $5 if you want to contribute. The point, look, I know you're not a fan, whatever. The point is, I got off Patreon the second I could if there was an alternative, because it's not a sustainable career as a creative type to know that overnight I could have all my work vanished without any recourse, without any explanation. Whereas now I can call Rubin up and be like, yo, what's going on? And have an actual response. I think that's a very big difference.
And a lot of people had the ability to call Jack Conte of Patreon and do the same thing.
Okay. I did not have that ability.
Right. So right now, the issue I take, and look, I think Dave's great. I think he's a friend. And Local sounds awesome. My issue is and always will be centralizing. Basically, joining any of these platforms means they could remove me whenever they want. And what do you think's going to happen? And I
mean, what do you mean who they? Who's you mean Locals or me personally?
Right now it's Dave Rubin. He can
Right.
snap his fingers and destroy your career.
I don't know about that.
Or like...
I mean, your income, your stream, everything you've posted on Locals.
Yeah, but I mean...
I'd be a little hyperbolic when I say career.
Sure,
you've got other platforms.
and he could be
I
like...
thought you meant being hyperbolic about the idea that you have a career.
Okay.
Fair,
No, a little
fair. I am here. Fair.
All right.
But I mean, that's a function of anything. If you're going to be a waiter, if you're going to be a chef, I mean, you're going to have some owner. Someone's going to, unless you're totally self-employed.
So reduce that amount.
Sure.
So that's
you're singing my song.
That's why we started Timcast.com. I was like, why should I be on someone else's platform? I should make my own. And what my plan is now, we've talked about it quite a bit. Ian's recommended some developers he might have. We're going to make an open source plugin that anyone could just drop on their own website, which creates the full package subscription model, and I have no control over it.
That's a great idea.
Absolutely.
I
am going to,
Oh, here we
with
go.
this project, attempt, I will say, to destroy all of these subscription services, every single one of
Let's
them.
just improve
and more power
them
to
from
you.
a distance.
I think this is something that I get into a lot on Twitter. People are so, because they sarcastically say, oh, just build your own Patreon. Oh, just build your own website. It's like there's a lot of smart people who are seeing these problems coming down the road. It's hard to miss. These problems are Godzilla sized. And all it's going to take is one smart person, here you go, and be like, this is going to be a workaround. And once this problem is solved, it is solved permanently. I'm old enough, I'm 63, to remember when the idea... I'm old enough to remember when people said the idea of, oh, make your own website would have been an absurdity. Now it takes 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Yeah, you get a WordPress plugin.
Yeah.
And they're amazing.
So
Yes.
we want to start. I mean, look, you don't need a lot for your own subscription service. Like Timcast.com is not this. It's not the biggest thing in the world. It's a relatively simple WordPress. From the new members we got, we were able to make a better website launching soon, which is now pro. And from those members, we're now going to start funding TV shows, movies. And I read through a treatment for a show we might produce. This is amazing stuff. It's going to be awesome. I want to create an open source project that someone could just install on a web server. Like they find a hosting company, they install it, boom. When you go to their website, it looks like any of these subscription services. It's got a login, sign up function. It's got a database. Now, there's some things you have to be responsible for, security, things like that. Your own payment processor,
Sure.
things like that. It'll probably be Stripe or PayPal like most people use. But it'll be like one click, boom, package upload, your website exists. Then you'll have all the WordPress functioning for uploading photos, and you'll have a little bit of a learning curve, but for the most part, you will have a totally decentralized Patreon system. Let me tell you. I talked to Jack Conti of Patreon a couple times when people got banned. And for a lot of people who may not understand what's going on, Patreon is a subscription service. They abruptly banned Lauren Southern, eliminating her income. They later abruptly banned Carl Benjamin, eliminating his income. And
Wait, let's all add, just so people understand, abruptly means it's not like YouTube where you get a strike. It's like you wake up and all your names are gone, all your money's gone, any money that they had in escrow they pulled for you, you're not seeing a penny of this. This is very sudden and it's out of nowhere and you're not given warnings. This is
Right.
people need to appreciate how extreme this is.
so Lauren Southern got pulled overnight without warning, wakes up one day to find out her income stream is just gone. Then they said, don't worry, we'll never do it again. And then they did it again to Carl Benjamin. What I was told, long story short, in a phone call with Jack Conti, I talked to him for a long time on a couple different occasions. I'll give you the gist of it without telling you necessarily specifics, because I'll respect his privacy in that regard, but it's simple. The sentiment was this. When one of our partners comes to us and says, we're going to shut down your entire website unless you get rid of one person, I have a choice to make.
Yeah.
10,000 people's careers and
Right.
their livelihoods, or one. Well, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. My response was, tell them to shove off. And then when those 10,000 people and all their 10,000 followers or 1 million followers each are wondering what happened, I'll point them in your direction. Instead, they just give up. So I'll tell you this. Much as I respect Dave Rubin, what do you think would happen if MasterCard called him up like they did to Patreon, and they say, if you don't get rid of Malice, we shut your company down overnight?
Well, let's just pretend he's saying Bridget Fetisi because she's much more expendable than me. Love you.
Love you.
We don't have to argue about this because this actually happened. So
Did it?
Cody Wilson, who is awesome, who's the guy behind Ghost Guns,
Yes.
Defense Distributed.
Yes.
I'm wearing the shirt right now.
All right.
He had something called Patreon. And he was
Right.
trying to make a Patreon alternative where people who are banned from Patreon can go there. And then
Patreon.
people who are heretics.
Yeah.
And his issue, why he had to shut it down, is because precisely like you said, Visa or Stripe, one of the payment processors says, no, we're not doing business with you. If you can't get money from person A to person B, it's really not over the internet. There's not a mechanism of exchange. Everyone's flipping out like, Malice, you're ignoring this. How's the market to solve from this? I'm telling people right now, whether it's through crypto or some other mechanism, there are a lot of smart people who see this for the problem that it is and are taking steps to work around this. And this is something that absolutely has to happen, but I'm sure you know even better than I do, people who are doing this and trying to have the workaround so that Visa doesn't have that kind of you by the throat.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.